So let's create the API. So as we know, since the name of our Express app is APP, so whenever we have to refer to this Express application, we have to call it by the name app. So I will create the registration API app dot. So the method is post. So the first argument in this post method is the root will be there in the request URL. So I'm just talking about the root. So if the root is, let's say, register user, this is the first argument. The second argument will be an anonymous function where the first argument is the request object and the second argument is the response object. So this is anonymous object. So arrow operator, then you have curly brackets, and then I will have my try catch block so that I can catch if there is any error in posting the data to the database server. So catch, inside this I will have some variable, let me call it as ERR. I'm just keeping the same name that you have in your document. Error. Okay, so if we have a try and catch block. Now inside the try block, first I will receive the data, and since we are using the post method, so the data will come as a part of the body and not as part of parameters. If you use get method, then information comes as a parameter, otherwise the information comes in the body. Let me create a variable for storing the name. Okay, so this is server variable equal to from the request. See here, the request object, from the request dot, to access the body we type dot body, and then inside the body we are getting three things: name, email and password. So let's get the name here, dot name, right? So we have to make sure that the the string that brings the name, its name should be same as this one, name. Okay, don't write in the registration form, don't write the name as my name or X name or something. So this should match whatever name you give to that string which brings the name, it should be name. Okay, the next one, let's say for email. So again, email, we will, from the request we'll go to the body, from the body email string is bringing the email, and the third one is the password constant, let's say password equal to, so from the request go to the body, get the password. So we have received three things, but one thing we must remember is that we have to, before storing this password in the MongoDB database, we have to hash it. Okay, and we imported this library, bcrypt library, for this purpose only, because we have to hash the password before we store in the database. So now I'll create one new variable here, const let hashed password. Okay, and in this I will store the password after hashing it. So for this we will use, okay, wait, and we have a class, we have a bcrypt. Bcrypt has a method called hash. It will have two arguments. The first one is the value which has to be hashed. In our case it is stored in the variable password, and next is the numeric value which will decide the strength of the hash. So bigger value will mean that the hashing is more strong, but it will be more time consuming. So we will keep it the value 10. Smaller value means it will be fast, but the hashing will not be very strong. Okay, so we have now name, email, and this is the hashed password that we have to actually store inside the database, right? Now once we get this information, I will create an object based on the user model class, because this information has to be stored in the user infos table. So I have to use the user model class. So let me create a new object and let me call it user. Okay, and this object has to be built on the user model which we created in the model class, right? Since there is an object, so I have to make put these things in the curly braces. So if you remember your user model, so here also I will have to keep it here, small case user model, and this user model that we have inside this user model class. Okay, we are exporting it from here. In the index.js we have to import this user model. Okay, so in the index model, if we have not imported, let us import it here. So import user model from model slash user model. So this import is possible. So now I'll create the model. So let's say here name, and the name we have received from the body, it is stored in here, right? So the value we will put it here, name. Okay, so this name refers to this variable which is storing the name, and this is the key of my object name. Okay, so although their values are same, but they are different things. Then the next key is email. In this key I will store the email which we have received from the request.body.email, right? So it is inside the email, so I will just put here email. And the last thing is the now the key for this object, I'm making it password, but what value I have to store here? I have to store here this hashed password, right? So hashed password. So now we have this user object, and now this user object we have to push it inside the collection. So if you see our in the MongoDB Atlas user infos, right now if I click here, query result 0, there is no record in the user infos so far, right? Okay, now how to save this new user in the user infos collection? So for this we will, after this object, await user dot save. Okay, just think of this like an insert command in the SQL, insert into collection, right? So now how do you know that this user is saved in the user infos collection? Okay, this will be saved because this user is built on the user model, on the basis of user model, right? And if you see the user model is mapping the schema with the user infos, right? So user model means here you are referring to user infos, so this information will go to the user infos collection, right? We'll do the catch part here, and before we send the catch part also, once the result is saved, we will send the response back to the place from where this registration request came, right? So for sending the response back, we have a response object, as you can see here in the API. This is request object, okay, which brings all the data from the client to here. And this object, just think of response as a person who will take the response back to a place from wherever the request came, right? So response dot send, just think of response dot send as your PHP echo statement or Python print statement. Okay, and now response dot send, and here I will send the object. In the object I will send two things. First is the user, so here key is the user and the value is the user object, okay, which you have just created. Send, okay, send this back. And second thing I'm sending back here is a message. Okay, maybe we have to use it, so I'm just sending it back here. Let's say message user added. So I'm sending the object with two things, the user object and the message, right? So we will use it accordingly. So whenever we have an API, we must know that what is the method of the app. We must know what is the method used for the API, what is the root, okay, and we should know what is the information that is coming to this API, okay, and what this API has to return. Okay, so this catch part is here. We will keep the code if because of any reason, if the registration process failed. Okay, so we can just display inside the console using the console.log. Okay, so whatever is the error, the reason for which this registration process failed, that will be stored inside the error, right? So you can write here registration failed, this is the message, and then whatever is the reason, that will be stored in the variable, this variable array, right? We can display here. So this is only for the console, right? And if you want to show the message to the user, to the website visitor, for that we can use our response object, response dot, okay, status. So I'll give the value status 500, okay. So 500 means some server error, and I can use, I can make a chain sending the status, and I can send some other information also. So I'm sending an object here. So the key, I'm calling it as an error, and the error message, let's say an error occurred in registration, some message like this, right? Some meaningful message. Okay, so that's it. This is
Even without the client side, we can check our APIs. So for this, we have some extensions in the VS Code. We have already installed the extension Thunder Client, and using Thunder Client, I can check my API. Okay, so here in Thunder Client, I will create a new request, and if you see my API request, the method used is post, right? So in my request, first I will choose the method post, and then if you see, the root is slash register, right? And the URL, if you see, the API for the server is 3001, and we are working on localhost. So I will choose post and then colon double slash, and we are working on localhost. The port for the server is 3001, and the root is register the user, right? Okay. Now this API expects the name, email, and password from the client side. So since it is a post request, so the request data will come in the body. So we'll click here, body, and here I can create the request object with the data. So I'm creating an object. So this data is in JSON format. The first field is the name field, and let's say the value is Jabber, comma. The second field is email, and let's say the value is Jabber at the rate yahoo.com. Third field is the password, and let's say password is 111. So when I click send button here, so this API, register user API, will receive this data, name, email, and password. Okay, so from this body, name, email, and password, this will be stored in the name, will be stored in the name, email will be stored in the email, password will be stored in the password, and in the next line, we are hashing the password. After hashing, we are storing the hashed password in the variable hashed password. Then here we create a new object user with the data that we have received just now. So this user is based on the user model. Okay, so this user model the maps to the collection user infos. Okay, now here the name is the value, and this name is the key. This is the email value, and this is the email key. This is the hash password, which is stored in the key password. So this user object with key, name, email, and password, in this line we will save this user by giving the command user.save. So since user is based on the user model, and user model is mapped to the collection user infos, so this user new user will be added to the collection student sorry user infos. After this is done, then response will be sent back to the client. In this response, you will have the two you have an object with key user and key message. The user is storing the user object, and the message is user edit, right? So if you just see here, if we run this, if I click on send, so you can see here, since the since the request was successful, so this response sends back this object with key, user, and message. And we can see the value for this key, user, and message in this response here. So the user key, and this is the user object. In the user object, we have name, we have email, and we have hashed password. And whenever a record is created in MongoDB, automatically it creates one ID where the key is underscore ID. And if you see the second key in the second key in this object is message user added. So you can see here that here message user added. That means the record has been successfully added in the MongoDB. So let's go and check our MongoDB whether this Java data has been added or not. So I'll go to the MongoDB Atlas, and here I have the collection user infos. So I can just click here and then click refresh, and the data has been successfully added in this collection. So our register user API is working, and this API can be called by the client from the client side using the registration form or something like that, right? So our API is working correctly. Thank you.